Hi there, Cindy Pope here at the Cool Tools Studio. I wanted to share with you a new way to look at your templates. By mixing and matching different templates, you can come up with so many new different projects. Okay, I wanted to show you a little bit of what I mean about mixing and matching your templates. Every time you look at a template, I want you to look at it in a new way because it's not just one shape. If you change it or add different shapes to it, it's a totally different shape. So I wanted to show you with the goddess template. I really like the tulip shape with the goddess template. And so what I did on one of mine is I put a bezeled stone, and you can go and see how big you want your bezel is. I used a flat back CZ, I love those. Or you can also cut out a shape. So you can have a cutout shape, or you can have a stone. So I think this makes planning for your pieces a lot more interesting. These mix and match really, really well. And I like small pieces, but I'm doing big so you guys can see it. Also, we have circle and oval templates at Cool Tools. So these are really great to do a cutout. I love a circle cutout. All about the circles. This one I really like with the marquee shape in the center. For some reason it enhances the curvy outside without being too busy. And I've done them with stones and with cutouts, and I like them both ways. But remember, when I'm cutting out a clay, I always do the center shape first. And because they're clear, you can kind of see straight through as to what it's going to look like. So that's just an idea to use your current templates in a totally new and different way. And I wanted to share that with you because I think it's a lot of fun, and I can't make all the combinations with some of my templates. So here we go. Here are the tools that we're going to use for this project. I have some applicator brushes. I have some stone setting burrs and some ball burrs. I have a flash shiner for afterwards. I love to use tiles in my work. They make cutting a lot easier. I have a vice versa texture that's a rose texture. I'm going to show you how to create different looks using pencil and paper. I always use my rolling frames. I'm going to use Aureus Bronze for this project. I like a scalpel to cut my pieces, and I like this little tiny pointed tweezer set to pick small things up. And when I'm making earrings, I always use a scale to make sure they're equal and they're not too heavy. I also have some of the cloud templates that are going to do a really cool outside. And then I have a new set of templates, and these are long templates, and they're graduated different shapes, and I think they make a really interesting internal cutout. We have some distilled water and some olive oil. And I have some little tiny Aureus balls I've created ahead of time to add to the bottom of the pieces. And a rolling pin, and then a rolling surface. Okay, so here's the project we're going to work on today. I'm going to use the cloud and the wavy oval template and show you how to do open earrings. I really like open earrings. They're lighter and they're a little bit more, I think, elegant. And while I'm doing this, I'm going to really quickly show you something you always want on all your finished pieces. And this is a new flash shiner that they have here at Cool Tools. And it has a 400 grit top and a foam back. And I want to show you really quickly what the foam back does. This is the final step before I send anything to a customer. And I also often send these to the customers, and it just shines up every single surface. Lizelle Crawley introduced me to this, so I definitely recommend using this as your final step. So let me show you how I came up with this project. And what I like is it's really nice to use two different sizes of a template, but also you can have a little different internal cutout that is going to make it a little more interesting. And so I did my new teardrop template with this one, and I did the marquee template with this one. So let me show you how I do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do two different ones, and I'm only going to do one earring. And I'm going to do one where the inside and outside matches, which is this one with the texture turned out really pretty. And then I'm going to do one where I'm going to use my new marquee graduated shape on the inside. And that really highlights the outside shape. And there's so many templates to make a choice with. Okay, we're going to start with the first project, and I'm only going to make one earring. And we're going to do the one where we have the same shape on the inside and the outside. And when I'm using a texture, if it's a low profile texture, I will go one card up, I'll roll, and then I'll roll down on the texture, you'll see. But if it's a really deep texture, sometimes you're going to want to have a 5 and a 3. So this time, because they're cutouts, I can have a really nice thick outside. So I'm going to start with 5 and I'm going to roll down to 4. And what I do is I oil my silicone. And you can do this straight on a tile too. I just like the silicone mat. I think it's really nice to roll on. And I believe on our rolling frame. So it makes it nice and smooth. I've got my Aureus 50-gram package. And if you're going to be doing a lot of projects, you want to get a hydrator and keep it in a hydrator. What I do is I take my distilled water and I just spritz it in the bag and then close it, because dry clay is not fun to roll. So since I'm just doing one earring, I'm going to just take a little bit of clay, and we're massaging it a little bit first. This clay is really in nice shape coming out of the bag, but you might want to do that. Okay, so I'm rolling to 5 cards. And there are lots of different ways to put textures on. We're going to use this beautiful Innie Outie Rose texture. I'm going to use the one that's a little lower fine line. And a lot of people put a lot of oil on here. I tend, especially with these easy release ones, these are great. I put it a little bit on the clay. And that's something I learned in my Rio certification class many, many years ago. So now we're going to go to 4. And because of these big textures, I don't need to have a support. But Cool Tools now has a support that will lift these frames up. So I'm going to roll from the middle this way and the middle that way. So, and I don't usually double roll because of ghosting, but I do, because sometimes I don't roll hard enough. I do kind of push down to make sure I get an even texture, because I don't like to re-roll. And then I turn it over and I let it fall off the texture. And here's where I get my little tile. And it doesn't need a lot of oil, just a tiny bit of oil. But your scalpel just kind of slides across a tile, which is why I love using the tiles. So I'm going to start with the inside cutout. So these shapes are usually from small to large. When I usually number them. A couple of the videos you'll see I numbered them. The largest one is going to be the highest number. So remember I told you I always want to cut that inside out first. And you got to find, you know, with something with a cutout, it's not so important which part you cut. But with a lot of my projects, you want to make sure you have a certain pattern in there. So I'm not cutting my Teflon or my silicone, and I'm also smoothing really easily across the surface. And I'm doing the inside first because I cannot center things very well when I do the outside first. And with this one has a little bit, a little pointed part at the top. I like to leave room for a hole. and I'm centering it well. I'm usually right on top of it with my reader glasses on. But you'll notice cutting on a tile, it just smooths really nicely over that. So I'm going to do this, and you can save the inside piece. I'm not going to use it today, but you could make another piece out of that. So this is a little thinner than the one I made, but it's going to be just beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the drying surface, and then we'll do the next project. Okay, so I have some more clay, and I am going to, this one I'm going to actually do no texture on, because I really feel like the Aureus has a beautiful polished look. Very goldy. So I'm going to start with a 4-card, and again, because I'm doing a big internal cutout, it doesn't have to be very thin. This is a really strong clay, so if I'm not doing a cutout, I often, go 2.5 cards, sometimes 2 cards. You don't have to worry like you would with some fine silvers. And when you're rolling, always start high, because you want to compress all the clay. And sometimes I'll re-roll just to get it a little compressed. A nice roll is going to give you a nice earring. So with this one, I'm going to start right with cutting. And I always cut in a tile. Occasionally I'll cut on my silicone surface and cut right through it, which is no good. So with this one, I'm going to be using a different internal cutout. So I'm going with my marquee cutout, and then I'm using this cloud template. So I want to make sure of which one I'm going to use. I think I'm going to use, I kind of like seeing a lot of the gold, so I'm going to use this one and this marquee. And the marquee, these new long ones, they have some guide marks, which are also going to help with the problem I have with not centering things. But cutting the inside first is really helpful. And like I said, I love these open earrings. I like the way they swing and the way they look. This inside piece, I usually save this inside piece for powder coating or another project. And I see where I didn't get it all the way through. So I'm centering this as best I can. My biggest challenge, centering. And again, I'm leaving a little bit more on the top. You can totally center it. I just like a little bit more on the top. I'm usually right on top of it. Okay, so we're going to pull this back. And a lot of times, if I'm going to save this inside piece to make a beautiful powder coating color or design on, I'm going to leave it in there while it dries, because I never remove my pieces until they're dry, because you might misshape them. And right now, after cutting with a template, it's like the perfect outlines. And I know it would mess it up if I tried to take it off. Okay, our piece is dry, and we have an extra piece that we're going to use for something else. You could put an overlay on it, or I usually save them for powder coating. So I'm going to show you how I put my holes in my pieces. And I love this ball set, and I love the stone setting set. They are the best thing for putting holes in pieces. And I also, I have a little part where I didn't cut very good. And the Aureus clay is, although it's very dry and solid, it's a little flexible, so I'm really not worried about cracking it. I'm going to just use my scalpel and get that little burr off. You could also use a sanding pad, but just as easily you could do this. Okay, I'm going to sand the outside a little bit. My holes are usually the last thing I do. The other thing I use is I use baby wipes sometimes, and a baby wipe will kind of smooth the edge. I'm wanting a really solid edge on this one. And sometimes where you cut will be a little high. And you refine now, refining after you fire is a lot harder. So refining in the clay stage, especially with this clay, is really pretty darn easy. Okay, so I'm going to figure out where I'm going to put my hole, and I always start with a little tiny burr. One thing is, if you get it in the wrong place, it's fixable because you're going to go bigger, and I have a rough time centering. So and this is a pretty strong clay, so you don't have to worry with fine silver. Sometimes they don't want you to get too close to the top. This is pretty strong, so I can get fairly close to the top. And then I'm going to go next with the size I actually am going to want to use. And if I want to go a little higher, which I do, I'm just going to angle it a little bit. I think I'm going to go a little bit bigger. I think the earrings swing better as they get bigger holes. And also I like to powder coat things, which you'll learn about in a future video. And powder coating, you need to have a slightly larger hole so it doesn't fill with powder coating. And the last thing I do, and this is just a personal preference, I think it makes your earring swing better and it's more elegant, is I take a stone setting burr and I'm just curving the outside, and it's just beveling the edge a little bit, and I really think it moves better, which is important with earrings, and it looks really pretty. So there, my earring's better, and I'm going to put a hole in this one, and then I'm going to fire them. So let me show you what you do when you're all finished and refined and ready to go. What you do is, I have coconut carbon available on the Cool Tools website, which I like Hadar's coconut carbon. It's a really nice, high quality carbon. And your pieces need to be a 1/2 inch apart. And I like to fire them right on top of the carbon because I don't like to move them after the burnout. It's when it's at its most fragile is after the burnout. So I don't like to move it. So after it's fired, I carefully remove it from the kiln and I gently put it down. So we did a burnout at 650 for 30 minutes. And then I put more carbon on top. And I like to mound it up. Oops. This carbon, most of it isn't ash and you can reuse it over and over. You just sift it in the air. And then I'm going to fire this for 2 hours at 1400. And it's going to come out great. And again, when I move it back in, I'm going to move it carefully because I don't want to put it hard down on any surface because the piece inside is very fragile. Thanks so much for joining me for this fun, easy project. I hope you have a new way of looking at your templates.